JRPGs are absolutely amazing and we love them, but it's not always clear where you should get started if you're new. So, we wanted to talk about that today and dive into what we think the best starter JRPGs are for getting into the genre as a whole. And we have a special guest here. We have Taylor from the Gaming Shelf. Thanks for being here, buddy. How's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me on. I was actually, checking out your guys' podcast. I'm like, ooh, I want to be a guest, but I don't want to invite myself on. And then when you put the call out, I was like, oh, I'll just raise my hand, I guess.
I'm glad you
You're
decided to
welcome
come
to
on
invite yourself.
anytime.
What you playing these days?
What like the entire world is playing. I mean, I mostly Monster Hunter right now.
Mm.
I was messing around with a couple other things like Dynasty Warriors Origins and some other like indie game stuff for videos, but that's Monster Hunter is going to take over my life for the foreseeable future.
Same.
Oh man. Yeah, I didn't get into the Monster Hunter series. Okay, I forget which one I played. I played one of them. I want to say on the 3DS. I'm not sure if it was a 3DS, but I think I played the demo or something. And I was expecting, I don't know, like in games, I love dual wielding, blades being like the sort of thief assassin kind of a class and being really fast. And just taking like 10 minutes to swing a sword, I was just like, I don't think this game is for me. And I know they've done a ton of updates, but I just never got back to trying it. And now that I'm like sort of interested, I keep hearing people say things like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna spend 1,500 hours in this game. It's gonna be the best thing ever." And I'm like, that's a long time. I
That
don't know if I
gameplay
can pull
loop
that off.
is crazy addictive. Once
Oh
it
yeah.
hooks
Yeah.
you in, you can't stop.
I'm with you though,
Oh
because
man.
I played so many of those earlier ones like on PSP and on 3DS like you, and I'm like, I don't get this. But then World came out and I'm like, oh, now I get it, because they like kind of smoothed it out and they made the world bigger and more
Okay.
seamless, and I'm sure from what I've heard in like reviews and stuff, Wilds is like even more streamlined, almost to a fault, but we'll see how it goes. But it's been fun so far.
I mean, if it's a fault to people who like the series, it might be a good thing for me. I don't know. Well, maybe I'll.
Yeah, I
I don't know
think
if I
that
should
was the
check it out.
point. No, it seems like they very intentionally tried to make this more approachable. Like, man, it's old Monster Hunter so clunky. Like the way you have to follow them and hunt them down. Now it's just you hop on your little monster and it runs right to them, and you have a little cat friend that like heals you. Like but you can almost scale it how you want. Like if you want to leave your cat friend at home, it makes it harder. If you want to walk on foot, it makes it harder. So there's
Oh,
ways you can
interesting.
manipulate it to make it like harder artificially. But if you want to, yeah, make it more streamlined, then that's kind of how the game's designed.
Okay. All right. It's a Palico, right?
Palico,
Yeah,
yeah.
I know something.
yeah,
All right.
you do.
All right, Slam. How's it going for you, homie?
Hey, it's good. I actually just got back from my New York trip a couple days ago. It was a fun time. The weather wasn't great. We had some issues with the family getting a little ill as it goes, but hey, we still had a good time. It was a fun trip. Got to see some family and friends, do some video game shopping. Very much enjoyed visiting some of my favorite stores that I haven't been to in a long time. I won't spoil everything that I got, my whole video game haul here, but I'll do a video on that later. So,
Come
to-
on, show the people one thing. Show the people one
it's
thing.
this, the 3DS. I picked this up. I've been on a search for this thing for years. I wanted this exact model, and they have gone up majorly in price. And where I'm at now, they're extremely hard to come by, even in terms of availability, but managed to find one in New York. I had to go to like 4 different shops and ended up in Queens to finally get my hands on one at a decent price. But I managed to, and it's in great condition, and I'm absolutely in love with it. So very happy
amazing.
with that grab for sure.
Very
Nice.
happy for you and not at all jealous. No, not at all. What you been playing these days?
Sure. So I've also been playing Monster Hunter Wilds since it came out, and I haven't played too much of it. Just played a little bit last night before bed, and then a little bit today after work. And yeah, I'm in love with that game. I know right now that I'm gonna become completely obsessed. But I've also been playing Ys Memoir, Oath and Felghana, and I'm basically done with it. I'm very close. I'm like on the last boss. This game gets very difficult. It ramps up in difficulty very fast there in those last couple of hours, and you think you're done with the game probably about 2 or 3 times, but then it throws you. You're like, it's like you got so much more left to go, and then you got to grind a bit. You know, you get these crazy skill checks toward the end, and it's a ton of fun. Super addictive. I just started playing it like 3 days ago, and I've had it on my Switch, just like roaming around the house. Everything I do, I have my Switch in my hands playing Ys. So it's like,
Nice.
yeah, that's what I've been playing so far. As soon as I finish that, it's all Monster Hunter for me.
Nice.
Oh man.
Have either of you guys played Ys Origin? Because it plays similar to
Yeah.
Oath and Felghana, but like way easier.
Yeah, it's
just
way
much
easier.
more fun.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun. I agree. And it's weird because I wouldn't say that Ys Memoir is not fun. I would say it's super, super fun until you get to maybe 10 or 11 hours in and you're almost done with the game. You're like, this is the final stretch. The story just got really, really cool. It throws a couple of twists at you there towards the end where the story wasn't super interesting until you got to this point. And then you're like, oh man, this is huge, right? Now I have to see it through to the end. But to get there, you have to jump through a million hoops and do tons of grinding.
Literally.
Yeah, it's literally, it's nuts what you have to go through to finish this game. You could even, I played it on normal, and you're locked into that difficulty mode once you start it. You can't change.
Oh, weird.
As far as I know, if there is a way, I don't know it. Because I probably, on this last boss, just to finish it so I can play Monster Hunter, I might even consider knocking it down to easy. But, you know, you're locked into that normal mode. And, it's, even if you knocked it down to easy or whatever the easiest difficulty is, those platforming parts of that game are unbelievable. They're crazy difficult. So, it'll throw it all at you there at the end for sure.
Oh man, I have a weird Ys journey because I started with 8. I've been eyeballing Ys for years, like on the PSP and well before that. I always saw the logos and I was like, oh maybe, and I just never did. In fact, at one point, I was looking at Ys, I forget which one it was, and then The Legend of Heroes, but it was before Trials in the Sky. Oh, apparently, I'm
Happy
getting
birthday.
balloons this time. The Legend of Heroes, like the first Legend of Heroes on the PSP, like Tales of Vermilion or something like that. And I was like, I want to try that one instead. And then didn't get back till Ys 8. And then I played 9. And then I played
like that
1 on Steam. And have either of you guys played Ys 1?
No, but I hear the combat, you're literally running into the enemy, right?
Yeah, it sounds like a terrible game if I were to describe it for you. You have to run at an angle to hit the enemies, but it is so addicting. It was like it was one of those games, like I want to make a video about it at some point because I was like totally surprised by how simple mechanically it is, but how fun and addicting it is. It's like totally unexpected, even though it's pretty much just running in, corners and hitting enemies. But the cycle of like doing that and leveling up and all of the other building you do, the story is like pretty decent. It's pretty interesting. I was really surprised, but it's a very different game than any like retro RPG I've ever played. So
yeah, it's got Ys has this thing that like kind of clicks with its combat. It's almost, I can't describe it, but a little side story. My wife was watching me play it at the table the other night, and she was like, she doesn't really play games like at all. I mean, she plays like a little bit of Animal Crossing or whatever, but she was looking at it and she was like, that looks hard. Can I try? And I was like, sure. So I handed it to her. I was like, just don't leave this room. Because if you played Memoir, you go out of the room and you come back and you start with like the
resets,
health.
yeah.
So I was like, just stay here. You can grind a bit, level up or whatever. She was like, she couldn't stop playing it. She was like, I don't know what it is. When I hit the enemy, it's so fun. I was like, yeah, it's just, I don't know what it is, man. I don't know how to describe it. They just do that really,
Yeah.
really well.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a
Even back to Ease
satisfying
1.
loop to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for me over here, just had my mom's. I'm gonna stop doing hand gestures because my camera always does weird things. It's my mom's birthday today, so shout out to mom. It kind of. She's a leap year baby, so it's like her birth, and tomorrow is day. You know, we'll get there. But we decided to go to Five Guys and Nothing But Cakes. If you guys ever had Nothing But Cakes before.
Mm-mm.
No.
They're
Sounds
just
good,
little
though.
these little like buntlet cakes that are just delicious and super addicting. But I'll be lucky if I can sleep tonight with all of that salt and sugar. So as I'm getting older, it becomes more intense. As far as what I'm playing, setting aside my dietary issues, um, I beat. So I think I said on the last episode I beat Fantasian, loved it, and then I was trying to figure out what I was gonna do next, and so I've been juggling Pokemon Crystal. I just got my battery fixed on this thing, like was it last weekend or 2 weekends ago or something? Um, Shout outs to Roman Games in Ohio, Cincinnati area. If anybody's out there, they're great. They do a bunch of repairs and it's a big retro stop. Um, so that was a cool place to go. Got that fixed and have been playing that on the Chromatic and then on the Epilogue, which is like plugs into the PC. So much fun. I love Pokemon Crystal. I love Gen 2. Having a good time with it. And then I'm also getting back to Xenogears. So I started Xenogears last year and I got to I would say almost halfway through the first disc, and just a bunch of stuff came up and happened, and I set it down for a while. Nothing wrong with the game. I was having a good time. I just set it down. So I finally decided to pick it up again and get back to it, and I'm having a blast with it. So I've heard that once you get through disc 1, disc 2 is basically just uh a visual novel.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like counting my progress in the game as like how far I am through disc 1 because that's like most of the actual gameplay. Yeah, so having fun with that one. Some of these other games are coming out though, man. Like
Yeah.
Xenoblade X is coming out. Slam,
That
you got me rehyped for that.
Yeah.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know,
I can't wait. I'm Xenoblade obsessed. Yeah.
yeah.
Have you
I mean,
kept up with what
yeah.
they're changing in that game? Because there's one part of that game that I hated, and I'm curious if they're changing it.
Which part did you hate?
So there's parts in the game where it's like you can't progress the story until you're a certain level. Like they level gate the story. Are they still doing that?
So they did some things with level cap for sure. Exact specifics on that, I'm not sure. I know that they adjusted it, I think, to no level cap.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but if they did that, there's a chance that they might have removed level gated stuff as well. Man, it's been a long time since I played this one. I cannot wait to jump back into it.
Yeah, that was what, 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think that's the last time I played
Jeez,
it.
yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of changes. They're really putting a lot more work into this than I had anticipated. They've got new characters, new scales, a lot of updates.
There's a ton of new stuff.
Quality of life fixes and stuff. It looks significantly better. There's a lot of UI fixes, which is huge when it comes to Xenoblade. So there's a ton in there, and I'm hoping you're right, because I do remember that being an annoyance for me as well. So hopefully they kind of resolve that.
But yeah, other than that game's awesome. Like, what a premise, right? Like the premise is like you're on this like colony ship and you have to find a new home planet, and so you're just like exploring this new planet. Like it's such a cool idea, and it's fun.
And there's a countdown, so you're like, we're all gonna die if we don't figure this out.
There's a super unique setup and gameplay loop to Xenoblade 2 as well. So like Xenoblade as a whole, it's very different from the actual trilogy. It's much more focused on exploration. Like you're gonna get a ton out of the side activities in this one.
Yeah.
You really, really are. So I encourage anybody who's watching, if you haven't played Xenoblade X before, really go in there. Don't mainline the main quest. Go and explore, do some side quests. There's some really cool storylines hidden in that world that you really should experience.
Yeah.
If you like exploring, that's your game.
Yeah, the exploration, the music. Oh, the music in that game was like, oh, it's just so good. So I initially was like, oh, Xenoblade X, yeah, like I'll get to it. And then the more I talk to some of these guys, the more I'm like, oh crap, I need to get this other stuff finished so that I can focus on Xenoblade. So no Monster Hunter for me. We're gonna
Mm.
bring that one back because I got to get this other stuff played. Um, yeah, but all good stuff, all good stuff. So let's uh let's dive into which games we think would be good for newbies to the series. I've thought about this a lot, and we've had conversations about this. There's so many games, entry points that people can come in. By the way, I would not recommend Xenoblade X as your entry point if you've never
Yeah,
played a JRPG before.
probably not.
Yeah.
But we figured we could talk about this one. The way we'll set this up here is we'll just go through. We each have 3 that we've chosen, and then we'll do a bonus round because we're fun here. We like to do that.
Bonus rounds
So,
are
Taylor.
fun.
Yep, that's
Mm.
right. So Taylor, since you are our honored guest today, why don't you kick us off with your first pick?
Okay, sure. I do want to give a little preface to like how I thought about these picks.
Sure.
So obviously, like, it's for beginners. So my thought was, short, I think, was something I kept in mind because obviously, like, some of the best JRPGs, like if we're thinking Xenoblade X is very long, Persona 5 is very long, there's a bunch of JRPGs that are very long. So I was like, let me keep it short and also relatively easy so they can at least get the concepts of like leveling up and all that stuff, like all the things
Sure.
that come with JRPGs. So my picks are like less than like 25-ish hours, relatively easy as well. So my first pick, I think, might be controversial, is Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Ooh,
I like
that's
that game.
controversial.
I felt like that's my favorite Pokemon game, but then I went online and apparently everyone hates it, and I'm like, oh, okay, well,
It's on a bunch of
surprise
my
to me.
lists on my channel. I actually love that game, and people always give me hate for it too. So forget them.
Oh, good. We got a fellow Sword and Shield enjoyer. And my thought is the reason I like it is it's like I'm a big visuals guy, and I think obviously compared to Scarlet and Violet, it looks way better. But I just love the world. It's supposed to be set in like England, or it's like their own take on England. It's very cozy, very charming. So, like the little starting town, you have like these little farms, and the color palette is like these really rich like reds and greens. I don't know. I just think it looks really nice. And you can customize how your character looks, which I think is cool. Like at the start, and then in each new town, there's like different clothes you can buy. I like that in JRPGs, like when you can change how your character looks. And it's just fun. Like I think Pokemon is just simple fun. You could collect these monsters. For me, it's always just what I think looks cool. It's never like min-maxing based on the gym leaders and all that.
Sure.
So I just get what looks cool.
Yeah.
I think that's a good starter. And then they have some open areas, like what do they call them? The wild areas.
Yeah.
And then they have those, I forget what they're called, those like little like holes in the ground where you do like the Gigantamax battles. I forget what those
I know
are
what
the
you're talking about,
dens.
the raids or whatever.
The dens. Yeah, raid dens.
Yeah,
I was
those
a little bit
those
obsessed
are
with
kind of fun. Yeah, those are cool to mess around with. And then me personally, I mean, I'm wearing a Niners hat. I kind of liked that the gym leaders were sort of these like sporting event arenas. I thought that was kind of a unique take on it, as opposed to just like these buildings that you only go to if you're like a good enough trainer. So the fact that they kind of looped it in to make it more a part of the world, I thought was kind of cool. So
Who's your
Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Who's your starter in that one?
I went with Score Bunny.
Me too. I love Score Bunny. He's so cool.
You have to do Score Bunny.
He's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. The other ones were just kind of, I mean, the green, the monkey guy, what was the monkey's name?
I can't remember. Grookey, yeah.
Grookey, yeah. But then the water one just looked super lame. It was like the little water lizard. He just looked so sad. He just looked so sad. And then I saw his like final evolution. He just looked so emo. I'm like, nah, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I can't get this guy.
He's supposed to be like a secret agent. 'Cause, like, did you see his like special attack? It's basically a sniper. He's got like a water sniper. It's
Oh, interesting.
when you
Okay.
think about the concept, you're like, Okay, that's kind of cool, but you could have done a little bit better with that design.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
I wasn't a fan of the design. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the Pokemon series as a whole is like you could pretty much jump in with any of these and they'd be a good place
Yeah.
to start with RPGs because you're just getting your basic like leveling up, building a team, thinking about weaknesses, like elemental weaknesses, things like that. Except for Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. And throw this in the trash. No, I'm just kidding. Um,
I actually don't mind those
uh,
either.
yeah, they're fine. They're fine. I think Sword and Shield is a good pick.
I
I
do
think
too. You
the
said,
Pokemon fan base is like so picky about
yeah,
things these days, but like if you're
Yeah.
genuinely new to the genre and you've never played a Pokemon game, like you're gonna enjoy Sword and Shield.
and
They're
of
good
the
games.
of the modern, mainline Pokemon games, I do think Sword and Shield is the way to go. I think you mentioned the vibrant colors and the setting and the wild areas, and these are all things that I liked with it as well. And I think the DLC packs were a lot of fun with Sword and Shield as well.
Yeah, they
The
were.
wild areas, a lot of people complained about those, but I thought they were really cool. It wasn't fully open world, but you could go out there and just kind of roam around, find other Pokemon. If you got into breeding or whatever, you can do what you needed to do out there. I really like I really like Sword and Shield. I really like Sword and Shield.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
dens, I did love the raid dens, but that's because like you would get the candies and I do get into if you give me some way of like breaking a game or making my characters or whatever strong like in Dragon Quest, the seeds or whatever, if I can grind those and get a bunch of those, I'm going to do it. And so I just went kind of nuts with some of those. Had a good time with that. You get little bottle caps and you can eventually like max out EVs and IVs and all that kind of stuff. I will say the downside to me, and this is a Brandon problem, 100%. Um, I got like so addicted to the raid dens that at some point I had this like burnout moment where I'm like, am I even enjoying this game anymore? Like, I feel like I'm playing it because I'm addicted, not because I'm actually having a good time.
Hmm.
So at that point, I had to set it down. But again, that's a me problem. We can, not foist that on anybody else.
Yeah, yeah,
For sure. Yeah. I mean, if you're just mainlining Sword and Shield, and that's what I do, like, I'll fully admit I'm like the most casual of Pokemon fans. I don't hunt shinies. I don't try to complete the Pokedex. I kind of just do the mainline story, catch the monster on the cover, and then if I'm feeling, I want some more, maybe I'll do a little bit of extras, but I don't
Sure.
go crazy like some people do. I don't do Nuzlocks or none of that stuff.
yeah. I'm the
So,
same way.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much the same way. I'm not the most hardcore Pokemon fan, but I love playing them. I play all of them, but just like you, I mostly mainline and then do the in-game stuff. And if I really like the game, I'll complete the Pokedex, but that's about it.
All right,
so let
Slam.
me ask you real quick about. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
but
you're good.
About
Go ahead.
Scarlet and Violet. I skipped Scarlet and Violet because I heard. I mean, visually, it just didn't look great. I heard it had so many bugs. Is it actually worth playing now, or is it again the internet outrage is sometimes exaggerated? But I skipped it because of all that.
My opinion is the outrage was kind of warranted, which is rare a lot of the time, but it is performance-wise very bad and still very bad. Is it worth playing? I still liked it. Like, to a certain extent, I still think the game that's there, once you get past that initial like kind of shock at how terrible it's performing compared to all the other games you're playing at any given moment, once you get past that and you kind of let yourself get into the game, it's decent. It's fun. My problem is they're not great at developing an open world game. I don't think they can do it. And, a lot of the criticism right now with the new Pokemon Legends game is it's not open world and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, if they can't do open world, which they prove they can't, I would prefer them to have a much tighter, experience like Sword and Shield or like they're doing with Legends, where they're more like wild areas that you can go into and explore that are larger, but not fully open world. The Scarlet and Violet open world is very empty, bare bones, not a lot going on. There's really no benefit to really exploring and doing all that stuff except catching Pokemon. And there's no level scaling, which adds this whole other layer of annoyance to the whole thing. So it's not truly open world. It completely does the opposite of encourage exploration in their open world. I could go on and on, but
Yeah.
it's not a terrible game if you just want to mainline the story, like you said, you typically do with Pokemon games. I don't think you'll have all that bad of a time, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd say it's a fun but relatively forgettable experience. I feel like when I was done with it, I was like, I had a good time. There's some really cool Pokemon in there. Like Ceruledge is like top tier for me of all time. Like that, he's freaking Mega Man with swords on his arms. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you get stuff like that in there that's pretty cool. But to Slam's point, um, it kind of had that bare bones. Like what I love about some of the old Pokemon games is like you go in a cave and you have to just kind of like figure it out, and you're finding items along the way, and you're finding little new paths here and there, and sometimes you run into something you didn't expect, or there's some rare Pokemon in this particular area that you didn't know was there. And in Scarlet and Violet, none of that exists. Like there are some areas, like I'm thinking of one particularly like open cavern area where there was like some cool mons in there, but overall it's like open without a purpose, and I think that's something that they need to figure out.
Yeah.
Hire monolith. Let them help.
That's what I said.
I know, I'm like,
And our
come on,
Pokemon
guys, let's, like,
podcast, I said that.
yeah we got to get that. Yeah, for sure. All right, Slam, I'm gonna throw it over to you next.
Sure.
What's your pick?
So,
First pick.
Kind of to introduce my list and what I was thinking around this. I wanted a different type of game for each different type of newcomer that might come on, because I do have a lot of friends that, I've been to JRPG since I was little, for a very long time. But there are a lot of friends of mine that didn't really start getting into them until somewhat recently, like within the last 3 to 5 years. And a lot of them will ask me, what game do I get started on? And some of them do want the really basic bare bones stuff, but some of them are like, forget the basic, easy bare bones stuff. Like, tell me what the best JRPG is. I want to play that, right? And so I've got some simple stuff. I've got one for, somebody who wants to jump in and see the best of the best, and then one that kind of just offers a little bit of everything. So first up on the list, I got Paper Mario Thousand Year Door. The remake for the Switch was incredible. Absolutely love that. It's one of my favorite games that I've ever played, and to be able to replay that again just reminded me of how well that game holds up. The turn-based combat still feels fresh today. Given how old that game is, it holds up well. And the story is fun. It has this like gameplay loop that, is pretty addictive. You can get in there, and its pacing is really well done. I think that there is some points at the end of the game where you have to do quite a bit of backtracking and stuff like that is a little annoying. But overall, it's a tight, I want to say 20, 25-ish hours or so to beat Thousand Year Door, if I remember correctly. So it's not a super long game either. It's not overly complex or challenging. The systems there are pretty basic, but it's fun. And it has a lot of the, kind of basic JRPG mechanics you're looking for. So Thousand Year Door, that's my pick.
I have not played Thousand Year Door. I think I have it. I think I got it when it came out for the Switch, and I just didn't get to it. But and maybe this is, hot take for me, but every time I've tried playing a Paper Mario game, and I've played like the 64 Paper Mario and a couple of others, like I kind of just found them a little bit boring. I just at some point I'm like, I'm not really feeling like I want to continue with this, and I could definitely give it some more of a fair shake. But which is funny because Super Mario RPG, I loved that game. I thought it was great. I had a good time with that.
I will
one.
say,
It was like short and sweet.
Not every Paper Mario game is great. Some of them are not good, to be fair.
Okay.
In my opinion.
But you're saying this one's definitely worth it.
It's the best one. So if you don't like Thousand Year Door, then you just probably won't like any Paper Mario game. For that matter.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
I'm kind of with Brandon. I like, if you were to ask me what's wrong with it, I can't say anything, but I kind of got like 10, 15 hours in, and then I just slowly stopped playing it for some reason, but like charm wise, I mean, it's got charm coming out of every corner.
Yeah.
It looks amazing. Like they did a great job with like the visuals, and especially like having it being a Mario. Like people know who Mario is and all the different characters. So to add some extra little like twists on Koopas and Toads and stuff like that is cool. But yeah, I mean, I want to get back to it too, because I'm like, everyone loves this game. What am I missing?
Yeah, it is.
But I can't say anything wrong with it.
It's a little bit of nostalgia for me too, because I played it when I was younger, you know, and going back and replaying it, I was like, oh man, I forgot how good this game was. And it was one of those things, you know, the turn-based button presses and kind of mastering that little system. It's tight. It's not overly advanced, but once you kind of get everything down, it's just really fun to play through.
Yeah.
So after Origami
I think,
King, which I didn't really care for, getting the Thousand Year Door remake was amazing.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it could also be like this is going to sound super cocky. I'm just going to say it. It could also be like a veteran issue.
It
like
could.
I've been playing JRPGs for a very long time. So to your point, for a beginner, someone who's familiar with Mario, let's say, and you want to just like get them into the systems, it might be absolutely perfect. For me, when I've played Paper Mario games, I'm like, I'm coming off of like Xenoblade or something. So this, you know, this is maybe it's not holding up in that way for me. But yeah, I still think it's a good pick, and I'd like to check it out.
Yeah, this is definitely my this is the basic JRPG pick. It's got the mechanics there for you. If you don't want anything too advanced, you want something quick, tight, not too hard or anything like that, this is my pick for you.
Yeah. All right. For me, as far as my criteria, I was thinking about games that are good at bringing you into the experience and teaching you, or are just kind of like good at giving you sort of the core components of what this franchise, or not this franchise, this genre, I should say, has to offer. So things that are a little bit more basic or straightforward, but still have depth that you can really dig into if you latch onto some of those systems. So the first one for me is going to be Ni no Kuni.
Love that game.
And Ni no Kuni came out on the PS3, I believe, and I totally missed it. The PS3 was like not a strong generation for me in terms of RPGs. So I bought a PS3 for Final Fantasy 13, and I like 13, but I was coming off of 10 and 12 and really getting into the series, and so 13 was different enough that I was like, oh, okay, this is not what I expected. And then there just weren't a lot of other strong RPGs in that generation, that at least that I was aware of, and Ni no Kuni was one that I didn't know until later. So I picked it up on the Switch when they did the remaster. And this is after I played the second one. I actually played the second one first, and then I played the original. And it was just so charming and beautiful, and the music was so good. It was really this this Miyazaki kind of experience. And I just think it's like perfect for someone who has never gotten into the genre. You get a little bit of the monster catching with the higgledies, and you get this beautiful example of how JRPGs can be what I think are like one of the most artistic genres in terms of how they do presentation, the music, how it all comes together with the battle system and everything. The characters were really great. I would say definitely, if you've never played the game before, go in blind, because story-wise, as it progresses, the twists and turns in the story are just so good and emotional and touching, and it's just like a gem. It's just a beautiful experience that is really good for newcomers, but also just a genuinely good experience. Not good for newcomers just because it's easier, although I would argue it is more of an easy RPG. But just overall, you'll get a real sense of like what JRPGs bring to the table. So that's why I thought that was a good one.
It definitely pulls on your heartstrings a bit, that one. The story and the writing and, like you said, the twists and the turns, everything comes together so perfectly. The art style is complemented by the music and the writing.
Right.
It's so it really is a touching story. I really like Ni no Kuni, so great pick on that one.
Oh yeah, I mean, that was like pushing as my favorite game like ever for a long time because like as you said during like the PS3 is kind of when I got back into games. Like I played Final Fantasy 12 and then I didn't play like console games, really any games for a long time. And then I was like, oh, Ni no Kuni, like this thing is like saving JRPGs kind of. And it looks like a Studio Ghibli movie. Like literally they were involved and it's the same composer and everything. I remember I would just boot that game up and just walk around because I'm like, I've never seen a game this beautiful. Like Ding Dong Dell, I would just boot up. I would always have a save in Ding Dong Dell and I would just walk around because I was like, man, like this game looks so good. And like with the remaster running at 60, it looks even better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I had some friends telling me about it to dive into it for a long time. They're like, "Oh man, you have to play this. You have to play this." And I always thought it looked good, but it was just one of those like, I'm playing all of these games right now, so I don't want to go back to a PS3 game, and I'm not even like that confident it's good. And then I played the second one. The second one's very different. I'd say it's still worth playing, but it's not, in my opinion, it's not as good as the first one.
Yeah.
Mechanically, there's a lot of great things about it, but like the story presentation, like everything else about the game, like the first one is way better by far, in my opinion. So yeah, getting to go back to it, it's just like, I get it. I absolutely get it. This is a gem.
Yeah, it really is.
If they could meld the two, like the storytelling of one and then the combat of two, like that would be a perfect third game.
Yeah,
because like
exactly.
two, the combat I think is way better in two, but it's a little easy. So if they could like maybe crank the difficulty a little bit, then like I think it'd be perfect.
They also had the town building in two, I think, too. That was fun.
Oh yeah. That was very addictive.
I was gonna say I was
kind of
pretty
like a
addicted
mobile
to that.
game. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get me wrong. I think 2 was a perfectly fun game. I got that on the Switch as well. I played it on the PS4. I was totally addicted to the town building. Any time you can give me a game where I could like let it run and accomplish things while I'm doing other stuff, I get super addicted to because it becomes this like game in my head where I'm like, I need to do my laundry, but I could be building a townhouse or whatever while I'm doing my laundry. Let's like turn it on, get it going, and then I'll keep checking in, right? So that element I enjoyed, but overall, yeah, the story in particular I think is just much weaker in 2. It was fine. Everything else about it was very, very good, but I think 1 really captures something that 2 just misses.
Yeah.
2 starts off like
oh
insane.
yeah,
like,
I know.
The beginning of 2 is like ridiculous, but then it just kind of like they
it
I think they
fizzles
just
out.
totally waste it. Yeah. I could not believe the beginning of 2. I was like,
nuts.
What is happening?
What is going on? Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
All right, Taylor, give us your second pick.
Second pick, we actually mentioned this. So my second pick is the Super Mario RPG remake. Now, I had never played Super Mario RPG like the original, so I went in with like no nostalgia, no nothing. I just always heard Super Mario RPG was great. And the thing I like about this game, kind of the same reason, Slam, you're talking about Thousand Year Door, super charming, like you're like in the Mushroom Kingdom going to all these different towns so you can talk to these different people, and it's just so fun to explore that. And then it's got that same sort of timed button press, and then also for defending, I forget if that's in Thousand Year Door. I think it is.
Yeah,
it's like when they attack you, you have to defend at the right time. And the remake changed a lot. Like before, I think in the original, to get around the world, you had to literally physically go through each town to get to another one, like to backtrack. But in this one, you can just walk around it like a Mario level selector, like in Super Mario World or whatever. So it cuts a lot of the fluff out. It looks amazing, runs great. The characters are cool. And it's like a breezy, like 12 hours.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty short.
It's a quick one to get through.
Yeah. So if you really are just like, all right, let me get a taste of what JRPGs are like, and you don't want to invest like 100 hours, like I think this is like a perfect place to get in, because like there's leveling up, there's characters that you're familiar with. There's like unique abilities for each character. The only thing I didn't like about this game, and I just think the way it's designed, there's no way to fix it, is like the platforming. Because it's at an isometric
Yep.
perspective, there were so many times where I would miss jumps just
Yeah.
because I couldn't see where I was going. That's the only thing I don't like about the game. But everything else, I think, is like
That's the same.
pretty much perfect.
Yeah, it's a tight game too. I had tried playing Super Mario RPG. I want to say like 3 or 4 times over the years, where like I emulated it at some point and then kind of fell off of it, and then um, there was a couple of other times, but then the Super Nintendo Classic, I think that one's got Super Mario RPG on it. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think it was that
Pretty
where
sure.
I played it
Possibly,
again. Yeah, and I was just kind of like, this is fun, but I'm gonna go play something else. And so when the remake came out, I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get through this, and it was just so tight and so fun and so charming. Like the pacing is amazing, just getting through it. And it's just kind of goofy, the whole like Bowser and Mario working together thing. Like
Mm.
I love that kind of stuff, and the way they did it, like the new added little like cutscenes and the I'm not sure if the original had the combined attacks. Um,
I think
that
that
might have
was
been new
new.
to the remake. Okay, yeah, that was
I
really
think.
great. I really get Gino now.
Yeah.
There's the whole like Smash conversation about Gino, and I always just thought it was kind of a meme. But after playing the remake, I was like, okay, Gino's pretty cool. Like
Yeah,
I get
he's
it.
cool.
So yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, our Super Mario RPG is one of those that, just like Thousand Year Door, it pulls on that nostalgia quite a bit. You see Mario, you see all the characters. Something Super Mario RPG does really well is it introduces some new, really likable characters that are recognizable to people that have played the game. So definitely like Super Mario RPG. Had a great time with that. That shorter 12-hour kind of makes it perfect. It's like you want
yeah.
an introduction to some JRPG type mechanics and you like Mario and you don't want to spend too long in a game. This is the perfect fit for sure.
Yeah. Don't miss those Final Fantasy references either, because that was awesome.
I
All right,
think there's
Slam.
a Zelda one too, isn't there? Or maybe that was only in the Super
Oh,
Nintendo version. Like, isn't Zelda or Link sleeping in in like some hotel or something
yes.
like that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, I think one of the Paper Marios has a Fire Emblem reference as well. I forget which
Yeah.
one that is, but yeah. Anyway, they have fun with that. All right, Slam.
Okay. So
Number 2.
Number 2 on my list. This is the one for the person that comes up to you and is like, look, I don't care about introductory mechanics or the basics or anything like that. I just want you to give me the best of the best. Just give me the best of what JRPGs have to offer. And my pick for that is Persona 5 Royal. Now,
Oh, I'm so surprised.
this might be my favorite game of all time. I've played it several times and will look for any excuse to replay it again. I love everything it has to offer. The story, the characters, the combat, the different gameplay mechanics, and just how everything comes together. And don't even get me started on the soundtrack. But it's
So good.
it's an incredible game. And to me, it is some of the best of the best. And it has some of the best turn-based combat, has some of the best characters that you can, see in a JRPG. It has some incredible writing. It has amazing variation in dungeon design. So, each palace in Persona 5 could be its own JRPG video game. It is that unique, that well constructed, and the twists and turns that you experience are completely unpredictable, and it just does some really, really incredible things. And I don't know how they're going to top it in Persona 6, to be quite honest. But yeah.
It's gonna be a tough task. It's so funny. There's a buddy of mine out here named Alex, and his brother Ethan. They're like gamers, but Alex is like much more like me, where he's into like anime, and he's really started diving into JRPGs, but he like found Persona, and Persona 5, he just gushes about that. And his brother Ethan is also into games, but not really into JRPGs very much. And so we are constantly Shout outs to Alex and Ethan if you guys watch this episode. But we're constantly like, you got to start here. Like, we get it. We know you're not into JRPGs. We know you're not that super into anime, but like, the storytelling that you get from a game like this is unlike anything you've ever experienced in another game. Like, you've got to try this. And I think one of these days, maybe it's going to be this episode, Ethan. I'm talking to you, buddy. Um, Maybe it'll be this episode that convinces him that he's finally got to give it a shot. Because it is so good, and you are absolutely right. Even if you've never played a JRPG, like, yes, there's going to be mechanics you got to get used to, but you will absolutely have an incredible time with this. And just like I said with Nino Kuni, if you're looking for something to just give you a sense of what JRPGs bring to the table, like that, it's hard to beat Persona 5. It's so good.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. And the thing I like about Persona 5 that I think it fixes that I think a lot of JRPGs have a problem with is it kind of gives you a quick opening. Obviously, it's like a flash forward and you have to go back or whatever. But I think so many JRPGs start off so slow, explaining the story, explaining the mechanic, explaining the world. It's like, oh God, kill me. But with this, it's like, okay, we're at the heist like right away.
Yeah.
And it's exciting and like you just get into it right away. I love that.
And you get to see all the characters in like full action, right? You're like, immediately when you see that, you're like, I can't wait to get to that point.
You're like,
You know
what the
I mean?
heck is going on?
Yeah.
And
That's
meet all
so
these
funny.
characters. Yeah.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, Taylor, because I feel like as someone who's been playing JRPGs for a while, like you get used to these games where you're like, it's gonna be a slow burn. Like, even when you're talking to people, sometimes you're like, it starts off slow, but once you get into it, it gets really good. But you're absolutely right. I didn't even think about that about Persona 5, but you do just get right into it, and it is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the only other JRPG I can really think of that could rival it in terms of an opening is like Final Fantasy VII, because again, you just get right into it with the bombing mission or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's of course I can't not recommend Persona 5. Like, that's the only game I've ever seen anyone cosplay as a menu in a game. I don't know of any other game where I've seen that. Like, when people are cosplaying your menu, you know you're doing something good.
Yeah, you've done something right.
I will say I have a bit of a I don't know what the word is or how to describe this, but so Royal adds like that Kasumi character, and then there's like, what do they call it? The third semester. I didn't realize that you could skip it or miss it. So my first time playing through the game, I missed it. And I'm like, I beat the game. I'm like, where's this third semester everyone's talking about? And then I went online and read how you do it. I'm like, oh, you have to like do social links and stuff? That's annoying. So even for someone like me, that's like Persona 4 Golden is my favorite game. That kind of annoyed me that was missable. But so I guess for anyone going in, like maybe look that up so you don't miss it.
100% use a guide if you are new. It's it's funny though. Persona 4 Golden, I agree actually, of the two, Persona 4 Golden is still just ever so slightly my favorite. But Persona 4 Golden, like, if you are not using a guide, you will 1000% miss that last bit, because the answers that you have to go through are so specific, and in some cases so counterintuitive, that I'm like, okay, yeah. So basically, a Persona game comes out, it's going to be great. Always find a guide. That's pretty much going to be the general rule. So especially if you're a beginner, use a guide. Follow along what they do. I had a buddy named Rob who did the same thing, where I was like, you got to play this game, and he went into it and he loved it, and he got to the end and he was like, I just put 90 hours into this game and I did not get the extra ending. And I was like, oh, are you going to do New Game Plus? And he was like, yes.
Oh my God. One last thing I want to say about Persona 5 is I love that it's not afraid to like touch on controversial topics. Like the first dungeon, I feel like goes all in, and I am not going to spoil it, but there's a part with On's friend, the volleyball player, that happens. I was like, they just did that?
Yeah.
That's insane. I cannot believe they just put that in a video game. Like, that was crazy.
Yeah. They really
Yeah,
do
so
The
that.
Persona games are so real.
Yeah, they are. Persona 3 did some of that as well. But
Yeah.
it's incredible, the writing, the storytelling,
Yeah.
and just the characters in general. Just great in Persona 5.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And they're all so different. Like you have like the nerdy girl who like doesn't go outside, then you have like this artsy guy who's like maybe on the spectrum a little bit, and then like the cheerleader stereotypes. So like it's totally mixed characters, and the way they come together and mix is like super cool. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's a great cast.
Yeah. The cast building in these games is like unparalleled. It's so freaking good.
Yep.
All right. Speaking of casts, I'm going to go to my second pick. And this one's going to be a bit more retro, and I'll explain why this is, why I'm picking it anyway. But I went with Fire Emblem for the Game Boy Advance. So the first Fire Emblem game that came to the United States. Now, I love the entire series. I think you could probably start anywhere in the entire series. It's really good. However, Fire Emblem for the Game Boy Advance, which is available on the Nintendo Switch Online, so you don't have to go spend $200 on that game like I did because I'm an idiot. But you can play it. You can play it on Nintendo Switch Online. And one of the reasons that I think this is an amazing point to start in the genre in general, is because of Lynn's story in the beginning.
Thank you.
I know.
I knew he was going to mention it.
Yeah.
I knew
I
it.
know. Like there are a few individuals
Yeah.
who may disagree with the value of Lynn's story, but this was the first Fire Emblem game that came to the United States. And because of that, when they developed it with a new audience in mind that had no context for Fire Emblem. So what they did is they built what I think is one of the most genius tutorials to ever be built in any game, where you start where you meet this character, Lynn, and you hear her story, you're starting to get invested, and then every single chapter up to chapter 10, they introduce 1 to 2 new mechanics. And it's just one step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time. The second chapter, you get 2 Cavaliers, which are 2 different units. The third chapter, you add in, I think it was a sword enemy as well as the axe enemies. And then from there, you get things like a healer and a mage. And then you get an archer and a Pegasus, and then a healer and a mage. And you just keep building up these mechanics. And then they introduce things like fog. What happens when fog rolls in? What's an armored unit? All of these kinds of things. So as you're playing, you don't even realize you're learning these things. You're just playing, and it's just naturally introducing all of this. And so then you get to chapter 10, you beat it, and it's like, okay, that was the prologue, and now we're going to get into the core story. And you have a new set of characters, but in the new story, all of those mechanics are in play pretty much right out the gate, like the first or second chapter in. But then all of the characters you played in the first 10 chapters come back, and they maintain their levels. So whatever you invested in those first 10 chapters come back. So to me, this was just like genius, because you've never played Fire Emblem before. You've never played, let's say, even an RPG, right? You're getting this level ups. You're seeing how this all works. You're starting to get into it. You're starting to have fun with this. And you're just kind of going. Like, there was no point when I was first playing that game where I was like, wait, what about, like, it's you just like naturally figure it out as you go because of the way they designed the game. It is absolutely brilliant. It's super fun, and even after you've beat it, you can do like New Game Plus and play it again. And some people would skip the Lynn story, but if you go back and knowing what's going to happen, invest in your characters and choose which ones you're going to want to use later and stuff like that, it now adds this new like layer of strategy to the game as a whole. It's just so good, and you get your story, you get your music, you get your characters. There's these supports in the Fire Emblem series where characters get to know each other, and they can have different endings if they have a certain support level. All of that combined, I'm just like, this is just a classic genius game that I feel like anybody could get into and really love it.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think this game teaches you to play tactical RPGs, basically, not just Fire Emblem. It is the perfect tactical introduction, period. Full stop. It completely teaches you everything you need to know about how to play these games in a way that is valuable and doesn't waste your time. So 100% agree with you on that pick. Like it a lot.
I wish I could comment. I've never played it before, but the way you described it makes me want to go back and play it because I'm one of those newbie Fire Emblem players that started with Awakening, and I haven't really gone back to the old ones. I'm afraid because it has permadeath, because in the new ones they have the ability where you can turn it off. So is it like hard? I mean, I'm a veteran with strategy RPGs, so I feel like I could find my way around it, but is it like super hard?
I wouldn't say so.
No, so if you, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, but if you go down to the Fire Emblem fan base somewhere out there in the farthest reaches of the internet, you'll find that there are a number of opinions about this particular Fire Emblem, that it's like too easy and all of these kinds of things, because the ones before it, 1 through 6 in Japan, are significantly harder. And then this one, because it was basically built for an American audience, they like really sort of toned it back. Now, there are still, don't get me wrong, there are still some chapters that can be brutal if you don't know what you're getting into. However, the benefit of the Switch Online is not only its availability, but you have save states and things like that. So I found that going and playing it on the Switch Online just made it that much easier.
It does.
Especially with, and this is, I wouldn't recommend doing this. This is like a total cheese thing. But there's a glitch that actually still works on the Nintendo Switch Online version called the mine glitch. So you get this mine from this character at one point, and if you're in a battle and you drop the mine and an enemy steps on it, you can turn the game off. And when you turn it back on, you have control of all the enemies, and you can basically make them all drop their weapons. So there's this one chapter called the Port of Badon, where I think it's the best place to do this if you're going to do this, because you have to, the objective of that particular chapter is not to beat everybody, it's to get to the enemy leader and talk to them. And that's it. However, you have a bunch of really powerful pirates, and then these other characters come in that are really, really strong. And there's an arena where you can, grind levels if you want to. So something that I would do on the Game Boy Advance version is I would do the mine glitch. I would have everybody drop their weapons, wipe them out, except for Dart. Don't kill Dart. That was a mistake I made. And then just grind in the arena to max everybody out. The problem was, in the Game Boy Advance version, if somebody died in the arena, you had to start all over again if you didn't want them to stay dead. And I had several instances where I'd put in like 2 hours grinding, and then I would accidentally not hit B fast enough to get out of the arena. They would die, and then I would start over. And I hated it. The Switch Online version made it so that
you
that
didn't
was
have to worry
never
about
a
that.
problem again.
Yeah.
So it's definitely the best way to experience this. And even though it's not a core component of the game, those emulation features definitely make that particular element much less problematic.
Well, it makes me want to go back and play it now.
Yeah, there you go. You heard it here first. Taylor's going to play Fire Emblem. All right, Taylor, what's your third pick?
Okay, so I'm kind of mixing it up with this third pick. So the first two were like turn-based JRPGs. Then my other two are action. And so this one is the Trials of Mana remake. And I think like this is such a perfect starter JRPG for so many reasons. Just to begin the game, it does something that I don't think I've ever seen a JRPG do before, where you can pick your team like right at the beginning. So normally in JRPGs, it's like you get a main character, you build up your party, and that's set in stone, and there's nothing you can really do about that. But in Trials of Mana, it's like you pick your main character, and then you pick the other two characters that you would meet later on in the story. And it's cool because when they give you that option, it's like, here's what they're good at, here's what their weapons are, here's what they look like, stuff like that. So you can, if you feel like you're predisposed, like, oh, I want a caster or I want more of a knight guy, you can just see right off the bat what they can do. So I think that's super cool. It's very streamlined as far as where you're supposed to go. Like it's kind of linear, which I think to most JRPG fans would be a turnoff. But if you're just getting started and you don't want to get lost, there's always like a little gold star that tells you where you're supposed to go. So it's just like, okay, go that way. And the combat is straightforward and fun, action combat. Every character has a different style, and you can swap between them on the fly, which I think is super cool. And then one of my favorite things that this game does is once you hit, I think it's either when you get a particular item or once you hit a certain level, you can change your character class. So it's like if you have the warrior, you can be like, okay, I'm going to double down and have, instead of a sword and shield, now they have like a broadsword, or I'm just going to keep going down the sword and shield route. And then if you have a spear user, maybe she like sprinkles in like magic or something. I forget what all the different variations are. And it changes their costume, which I'm like all about changing costumes. So I just think that's cool. And in the remake, they added like 2 extra, like, or I don't know if it's 2 per character, like super extra special classes.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, the stories are like nothing to write home about. I think they're kind of straightforward and they're like par for the course for JRPGs. It's like big bad guy or someone trying to take over your kingdom or whatever. So at least you'll get used to the tropes. I think the music's awesome in that game as well. And like I said at the beginning, it's relatively short. I think it's like 20-ish hours. They did add in the remake this sort of like post-game dungeon that I don't think is very good. But again, if you want to interact with that, you can do that. So yeah, I think that's a super good introductory JRPG. And then we were talking about New Game Plus. If you really like it, then you basically have a second game you can play because you pick 3 characters and then you can just start again with the other 3 characters and the story is totally different.
Yeah.
So you basically get like 2 games in one in a way. So there's a lot of replay value as well.
Yeah, I like Trials of Mana, the remake. It's really fun, and it also, I would agree with basically everything you said. That 20-hour mark, the combat's not overly complicated. I like the art style too. It's very welcoming and kind of cozy feeling. The story, while like well written and stuff, it's not over the top insane with a bunch of hard to follow plot lines. I think, it's a good pick.
Yeah, I haven't played it. I've wanted to. The Mana series in general. I'm gonna put my retro credit at risk here. I've never beat Secret of Mana, and I don't think I beat any of the Mana games. I've played them all. I've never beat any of them. So this is one that I want to get to. I want to like really dive into the Mana series in general, and make videos about it or whatever. But I'll get there. The way you presented it though does sound pretty compelling. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think they're good.
I haven't played the whole breadth of the series either. I've really only played the Trials of Mana remake and the Visions of Mana, which is awesome. God, my heart breaks for that studio closing, and I don't know if that game sold super well, but that's a really, really good game.
I liked it too.
Yeah, so fun, so colorful, and
yeah, it really was such a cool art style, that game.
I started Visions of Mana. I have that one too. It's the same thing. I've started all of these and I don't finish them. I forget what I got distracted by. I don't know. There's like Persona 3 remake and Final Fantasy 7, and there's just like a bunch of stuff coming out, and I ended up dropping it for something else. But I do also want to get back to that one because when I started it, I was like, this is freaking gorgeous. Like this is incredible looking. So yeah, we'll get there.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get there.
Oh yeah, 2024 was nuts. Like there were so many games I missed because it was just like one after another, and like, something had to get missed.
Yeah.
So I get it.
All right, Slam, what you got for your third pick?
Sure. Now this is the one that's got a little bit of everything for somebody that comes into the genre and wants to have one game kind of show them it all. And for me, that's Dragon Quest XI S. And this game is so good. It takes a classic formula and modernizes it in really cool ways. It's got a great world, really amazing soundtrack, cool characters. The list could go on and on. It does this really cool thing where you can also play the entire game in 2D mode. So if you want a taste of what, a classic Dragon Quest feels, but it feels like, but you don't want to play a whole Dragon Quest game where you can play some of this game in 2D mode and then switch back to, 3D and back and forth and vice versa. And it's a really interesting game. It is on the longer side. I want to say, what would you guys say? Probably 80-ish hours or something.
Depending on
80 or
how many
90.
extra things you want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it doesn't feel like it. I think I went back to replay Dragon Quest 11. I want to say either last year or the year before that. I've played this game a few times, and I went back to replay it, and I finished it relatively quickly. It definitely didn't feel like 80 hours, but by the time you're done, it's just like time flew by, and that's a sign of a great game to me. So, Dragon Quest 11 offers a little bit of everything. It's a really cozy comfort food type game for me, where if I need something that it's just going to make me feel good, you know what I mean? Sometimes you need that game, and for me, that's Dragon Quest 11. So yeah, that's why it's on the list.
Yeah, the demo for that one too is what, like 10 hours or something?
Yeah,
like,
it's long.
Yeah, it's if anybody is interested in that game and you haven't played it, just get that demo. You can put so much time into it. I grabbed the demo, and when I played the 10 hours, I was like, I have to buy this game now. I need it immediately.
Fully
because,
invested by the time that demo
Yeah,
ends,
I'm all in.
Yeah. No, I that's one of my favorite games ever. You were talking about like the world and the exploration. Like one of my favorite things to do in JRPGs, this is like such a classic thing. You get to the new town and then you just go in everyone's house and like steal all their stuff. And like
Dragon Quest, that's
11,
the coolest stuff still.
Oh yeah. And it's like, especially in the first town, Heliodor, I think, is the first big town you go to.
Yeah.
And like there is so much stuff to find, and like that town is so big. I just love doing that. There's like, this sounds like a weird thing to like be excited about, but that game is the first Dragon Quest game I believe that has a jump button. So there's like kind of light platforming, like you can climb to the top of houses and stuff.
Which
again,
threw me off at first too, because I wasn't used to being able to do that, and it kind of encourages it when you get into these towns. And yeah, Dragon Quest 11 has so many cool things to find in the nooks and crannies.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, going back to what we were talking about before we started the podcast, with like exploration being really, really important to making a JRPG feel fun. I feel like Dragon Quest XI has just like nailed that.
Yeah.
With all of the exploration that you can do in the towns and things, for sure.
This was also something we talked about before, a little controversial, but I think the S version is a must because you can speed up the combat.
Yeah.
I would worry that maybe someone new would find the base OG version boring. Again, I had a whole stream about that the other day, but I'm glad that they added the speed up mechanic because I think it just kind of makes it more tolerable.
Yeah, especially because Dragon Quest games, you got to do a lot of grinding. It's true. And speeding up that combat for some of the grinding sessions is actually absolutely essential, in my opinion.
I believe you mean you get to do a lot of grinding in Dragon Quest games because those metal slimes are fun to fight. I like, again, this is like totally a Brandon problem, but the metal slime thing in Dragon Quest games for me, I like when I started 3, the HD 2D remake, I was like, give me the metal slimes. Where are they? I am going to hunt them down and like speed through the game to get to them, because there's that feeling of like getting 2 or 3 of them and getting enough experience that you level up multiple times. You're like, there's nothing like this when it comes to grinding in any other RPGs. And you get to the liquid metal slimes and all that stuff. I have the most fun grinding in Dragon Quest games than probably any other RPG. So
yeah.
Anyway, that's my hot take. All right. My third pick for a good starter RPG, I chose Final Fantasy IX. Now, let me be clear. you could almost pick any Final Fantasy game to start with the exception of the MMOs, and you would get it and you would have a good time. I chose Final Fantasy 9 specifically because I feel like 9 has a really good story, really compelling characters. It's got a beautiful world. The music is amazing, but mechanically, you can get skills and stuff from basically wearing equipment. So it's fun. You can get a lot of depth out of it, but it's pretty straightforward. You just read the skill, figure out what it does, you level that item up, and then you can swap equipment and get new things, and then sort of mix and match which abilities you use for the different characters. But 9 really captures kind of like the essence of Final Fantasy
Mm.
in a way that the other ones don't necessarily. Like they all have their own unique characteristics. I love the franchise as a whole, but 9 kind of gives you this sense of like the different classes you have, Zidane or Zidane, however you say it. I've always called him Zidane, but I think that's not technically correct. He's like the thief class, and then you have Garnet or Dagger, who's like the white mage. You have Vivi's the black mage, Steiner's the knight. So they have these like representations of the different classes that you get from the different series, but they all have their own unique personalities and quirks. And yeah, it's just one of those. I'd say it's pretty straightforward. You can get some depth. You can really get into it as you're building the class, or you're building your party and figuring out which characters you want to use. And there is some difficulty towards the end with some of the bosses, but I think this one just really nails. If you want to get a sense of like what people mean when they're talking about Final Fantasy, 9 is a really, really great place to start. Um, so that's my choice for that one. Again, I'm going to say that one loosely because I really do think you could dive into whatever 4, 6, 7, 10. Any of those would be great starting places. But for me, I think 9 is it just ekes it out just a little bit there as a good representative of the franchise.
Yeah, I agree with the whole sentiment. Like most Final Fantasy games would be good starting points. You pick it up, you'll get it, like 10. It's kind of, for me, my recommendation would be what my favorite Final Fantasy game is, and that's 10, right? So I think a lot of them work in this scenario. 9's a good pick.
No, I agree with what you were saying. Like, if you want to say the most Final Fantasy-ish Final Fantasy, I think 9 hits it on the head because, brings it back to the fantasy setting, and I think it just has like one of the best casts of any game. Like, Vivi might be my favorite Final Fantasy character.
Yeah.
He's
Yep.
so
Vivi's
cool.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his whole story, it's amazing. And yeah, that world, the music, it's really great. I think people didn't appreciate it at the time because up until then it was all like they were trying to go for photoreal and like proportional characters, and it's a little goofy. But I think time has been kind to that game. I think
More than others, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And there's rumors of a remake.
Yeah.
So who knows?
Yeah, let's go. Let's do that. That's what
Let's do that.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see how they go about doing that. I'm intrigued. That and tactics. I'm interested to see what they do with tactics. But yeah, I think you're right. At the time, yeah, because they had 7 and 8. And both of them were like edgy,
Yeah.
edgelord main characters, and
Mhm.
and then you get to 9, and it's like, who is this goofball, and why is there a little black mage, and Steiner looks kind of goofy. But the funny thing about 9 is I feel like the art style really throws you off with the sort of level of maturity that the game has. Like there's some deep
Mm.
stuff in this game that really hits home, pulls some of those emotional strings, like even right out the gate with like the evil forest they go into and what happens there, and characters having to cope with different events, and having to sort of mature and figure out how to work together in the scenario they're in. And it's just Vivi in particular, like there's a reason so many people love Vivi as a character from the Final Fantasy series. Like if you get through 9, you're just like, oh my gosh, like what an incredible character
Yeah.
he is.
Yep.
So yeah, I think it's Again, we could probably go do an entire episode just gushing about Final Fantasy, period. But
Yeah, we should.
9 is a good. We should absolutely. 9 is just a great place to start, and then you can jump around from there.
Yeah.
All right. So those are our top 3 picks for where to get started. So now we're gonna do the bonus round, baby. Let's go.
Yeah.
Need some sound effects or
All
something.
right.
Yeah, I was thinking we should have some cool
Get those
sound
balloons
effects.
back up on your screen. I don't know how you get
Yeah,
the balloons
how'd you do
going.
that?
Wait, can I do the
We should get
if
it
you
all
do
in
this
there.
sometimes? Oh, it's not
You
doing it
want the
now.
thumbs up, it won't give it to you.
I know. It's making me a liar now.
It has to be.
Usually
a
you do
mistake,
this and
you know, like try to throw it back. I think you do that. So
There it
You got
is.
fireworks. Let's go.
Yeah,
Fireworks.
baby.
That's even better. Sparkles. Let's go.
bonus round, baby.
Bonus round is
Okay.
started officially.
All right, Taylor, give us your I was gonna say your first bonus, but it's your only bonus. Give us your bonus.
Yeah. I have sort of a weird pick for this one, but after I explain it, maybe it'll make more sense. But I have Ease 7, and I think this is like a game that most people wouldn't pick. It's sort of like a forgotten game. I think a lot of people obviously started with 8 and then kind of went from there. But when I think about Ease 7, like if you just want to like think about pick up and play like immediately fun, E7 is that. Like it has all the hallmarks of a JRPG where it's like you go to a town, there's a story, then you have a little bit of like a dungeon and a boss, more story, rinse and repeat. Like the moment to moment gameplay in E7 is so good. And it's like the game that started that like character switching, like each character has their own like attack style, like piercing, slashing, whatever it is. And you can actually fight with Dogi, which I can't remember the last game Dogi was actually a playable character. So that's fun. And again, it's very tight. It's like 20-ish hours. And it's the only game I can remember where I beat the game and I immediately started a new game and just played it again because it's just so fun. And like
Those are the best.
It's good. It's so rare because sometimes you just are like, wow, that was draining.
Yeah.
I just need to like soak in the ambiance of like
The
finishing
credits.
this amazing game. Yeah, right.
That's gonna be Ease
And this-
memoir for me.
Oh yeah. but this game is just like, oh, I want to start another file immediately.
Right.
And it also has some Zelda-ish aspects where like every dungeon you get this sort of like new tool to help you get through the dungeon and then you need it for the boss. Like so for example, there's a dungeon where there's like spiky ground and then you get these boots that kind of let you walk over it. And then the boss, there's something that the boss does where you can do that. And basically there's something like that for every dungeon. So it's like constantly introducing new things. The music's really good. I don't know if the story is anything to write home about, but like if you're just wanting to get into that fun loop of grinding, leveling up, getting new abilities, just enjoying the adventure, which I think is what JRPGs are really great at. Like I think E7 is super, super fun.
Thanks for
Oh,
that
that's
recommendation.
interesting.
I haven't played it.
Yeah.
I played a lot of these
Yeah.
games. I have not played 7, so maybe I should.
Yeah.
I
like I
would
said, I've
argue
only
that-
done go ahead.
I was gonna say, I would say outside of like Final Fantasy Tactics War of the Lions, which I don't know if that would count. Like E7 is like I think the best game on PSP.
Really?
It's like my favorite. Yeah, it's super fun. It's on PC now. You can play that game on PC. It's remastered and all that good stuff. But yeah, it's really fun.
That's some high praise coming from a Final Fantasy Tactics fan over there.
Yeah, yeah. I would say it goes back and forth because like Tactics has that weird slowdown thing that they messed up in the PSP version, but I mean the game itself is still like amazing. But yeah, it's like 1A, 1B with those two games for me.
They just in Tactics, they just really wanted you to experience like blowing something up. You know, when you use fire magic, they just really want you to zone in on it and slow down.
That's right.
And appreciate
Really-
it, right?
Yeah,
Appreciate
that's
it.
right.
Oh, that's interesting. I'll have to check that one out. All right, Slam.
Yeah.
Okay,
Your
so
turn.
my bonus pick. I wish I had some fireworks going. Would be
I'll try for you. It's not gonna work now.
it's completely random.
Yeah, it is.
My bonus pick would be Fire Emblem Three Houses. Now,
All right, Fire Emblem. Let's go.
Yay.
I think Fire Emblem Three Houses is my favorite Fire Emblem game, and I get a lot of flack whenever I say that on my channel.
Don't listen to the haters.
But I love this game so much, and it could be because I'm such a diehard Persona fan, but it implements a lot of the stuff, with the school and things like that. You get to know these characters that you go into battle with on a level that a lot of the other games don't necessarily do. There's a lot of customization and things like that, but while some people might hate the that part, the whole professor school part, they just want to do the battle stuff. You can play Fire Emblem Engage because that one has great battle system and everything like that, and a lot less of this stuff. But I prefer this, and I think that Three Houses does a great job of doing the different storylines that you can go through, right? And experiencing the game in 3 different ways from 3 different perspectives with different play styles and different characters. And I really
4 different perspectives.
Yes. And I think I think it's just a ton of fun. You can get as much out of it as you put in, right? You can mainline one storyline and get through it relatively quick, or you can dive in like Brandon did and experience everything the game has to offer and really just go completely all out.
Yep. Did we lose Taylor? There
Just
he
for a
is.
second.
Sorry about that. Someone was trying to call me.
No, you're
No, you're
good.
good.
But yeah, Fire Emblem Three Houses is a great game, and I don't think it's overly complicated for people that want a Fire Emblem to start with.
Yeah.
I think it has a lot of modern kind of mechanics baked into it that if you're into more modern, it doesn't even have to be really a tactical RPG, but if you're into more modern games, it's going to have some of that stuff that feels kind of familiar to you.
Yeah. Yep. As someone who is part of the Fire Emblem Illuminati, who has seen all of Fire Emblem Three Houses, I couldn't agree more.
Wow.
Yeah. I know. I don't know, Taylor, if you've seen any of this, but I went through all 4 paths, and then I did the DLC, and then I played a 5th time because the red path is slightly different once you've played the DLC because you get access to new characters. So
The red path
I
is
have
really
literally
cool
done
too.
it all.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
red path is very interesting.
That game is so flippin' good, and it's so interesting. If someone does decide, and I've said this before on the podcast, so I'm just going to say it again. If someone does decide that they want to go all in and go through all the paths, it is way more interesting to talk with people who haven't done it, because people get so opinionated about certain paths of certain characters, and they have no idea what they're talking about when they haven't done all of the paths. So you could just sit there and, just turn your nose up a little bit, and you're like, okay, sure, you have an opinion. That's fine.
Yeah, Three Houses is great. It really
It's
is.
such a good game.
It was my
I love that
obsession
game.
there for a little while. I played it a ton.
Oh, yeah.
Oh
yeah. Yeah, I think I clocked like 450 plus hours into that game. So
Wow.
Big fan.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's probably my favorite Fire Emblem, like as an entire package, probably my favorite too. And I'm with you because it plays like Persona, right? You have the little schedule and then there's always a battle at the end. And I liked the addition of help me out. What are they called? Like the little squads that are with you. So it looks like you have a little army with
The
you every time you
battalions.
say. Battalions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really neat. And then just I gotta say, especially coming off of Fates, I have to hand it to Nintendo and Intelligent Systems for not selling that as 3 separate games.
Yeah.
Because they could have done that. Because
Yes.
with Fates, they sold
They
it
did.
separately.
Yeah.
And then this one, they're like, no, we'll
Yeah.
do it in one. I thought they were going to like take the Pokemon route, but they somehow had restraint and they just put it all in one game, which I was surprised.
I'm glad.
Yeah, I'm so glad. Yeah, especially now that we have discovered that, the 3DS shop goes down, and the Fates Collector's Edition or Special Edition, which is the only one with all 3 games on a cart, being stupidly expensive. Oh no, Three Houses, that would have been a tragedy.
Yeah.
Because Three Houses is a classic I think it's gonna last. So we need that access for sure.
Yeah.
And I think if the rumors are to be believed, the next Fire Emblem game is going to be a remake of
Of
Genealogy
4.
of the Holy War, which is kind of a school setting, if I remember right, or in
I'm
some
not
kind of
sure.
academy or something like that.
I started 4. I got a repro cart for that one to just try it out with an English translation pack. Um, I'm really interested to see what they do with that if they decide to remake it because it is freaking hard. I so far I haven't played much. So far I've only gotten past the prologue into chapter 1 and I'm already like, how the heck are you supposed to do this?
Yeah.
Um, so that'll be really interesting. I would love to see them remake it because I know they're going to add a bunch of quality of life features. It'll make it more accessible. Um, but yeah, that one's going to be interesting for sure.
Yeah. I'm excited to see what's next for Fire Emblem.
Yeah. Speaking of being excited for what's next, my final bonus pick. I chose Chrono Trigger. I'm just going to get right to it. I think Chrono Trigger is a good pick. I didn't choose it as one of my main picks because not everybody enjoys the sort of Super Nintendo era of RPGs that are like getting into games for the first time. I know that's like everybody's like, "Oh, what are you talking about? Chrono Trigger's like the best game of all time." I personally think that Chrono Trigger, from like a pacing perspective, a story perspective, music, world building, all of those things is it's a masterpiece. So don't get me wrong. However, I have encountered a lot of people who have never played Chrono Trigger before and or have not played any of the Super Nintendo era of RPGs who started it on like Steam or something and were like, I don't get it, right? Um, so I think there's something there that makes it so that maybe it's too simple or they're just not sort of getting the hype. Maybe it's just too legendary from sort of a hype perspective. However, if you are new to RPGs, Chrono Trigger is a really great top to bottom example of, again, the combination of characters, music, art, story, lore, getting in there, giving sort of that classic call to adventure with the characters going in, accidentally stumbling upon time travel, realizing that they have a problem of the world being destroyed on their hands. And because of this thing they found, they can fix it, right? So it's kind of this classic uh we're going to be the heroes because we have this opportunity story. And then it gets really deep like later into the story. There's a
Yeah.
lot of the early stages where it's just kind of like getting to know characters from different timelines, or not different timelines but different time eras, that you're kind of bringing along the way and seeing how they relate and seeing how things impact other eras and stuff like that, which is really cool. But then there's like this point in the game where it really just goes deep with some of these characters and it gets really really interesting. There's a big old story twist in this one that I won't spoil, and based on how you interact with all of these different elements, there are like, what's it, like 15 different endings or something like that. um and yeah, there's one particular element that I don't want to spoil for anybody new, but something really crazy happens, and you can totally choose to move on, or you can find a way to go back and try to undo things, and it just makes it a really unique experience. And I think it really captures the creativity of that era of JRPGs in particular. Like what they were able to pull off in that game was really incredible. So I think that's a really fantastic game to go try out, even if you're new. And it is relatively straightforward enough in terms of just mechanics, battle system, leveling up, things like that. You don't have to do a lot of grinding. It's pretty tight. Call it like a 15-20 hour run. And then once you've done that, if you want to go get some of those other endings, it's much faster because of New Game Plus. So it's a good one. Chrono Trigger is just a good one for someone to jump into, I think.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever met anybody that likes JRPGs but doesn't like Chrono Trigger. So I feel like that's a really solid pick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like I actually think like in terms of the Super Nintendo era JRPGs, I think it actually holds up incredibly well because I played Chrono Trigger for the first time maybe 6 years ago, and I was like, all right, I got to play this and see what all the hype's about. And I played arguably the worst port, which is the PS1 version, and I was still like, I'm like, okay, this is a Super Nintendo game. Like, what can they do? But there were so many times where I'm like, oh my, like where they were doing stuff that I didn't think were possible on the Super Nintendo. So that game was like constantly surprising me. Like a very minor spoiler. That's sort of, it's like a gameplay thing, but there's this part where you're in jail and you're trying to break out. And I'm like, oh, let me punch the back of the wall and try to like climb out. But you can't do that in a Super Nintendo game. I'm like, oh, okay. And there were just like little things like that constantly throughout the game. I'm like, I didn't think you could even do this on the Super Nintendo. That's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the team up moves are neat. And like the way I think it's really cool to see how, because you're constantly time traveling, so to like go to one area and then just see how it's changed over time, that's like so cool. Like so few games do stuff like that. So man, that game was just way ahead of its time, man.
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it
much
still
so.
holds up really well.
It's timeless. Yeah.
No pun intended. No, that's a good one. This is fun, guys. We're coming up on an hour and a half, which is a lot longer than our typical episodes, but I'm glad we got to do this. These are all really great picks. Everybody, let us know in the comments what games you guys would choose for someone who's getting new or starting with the genre in general, or what games you think are worth starting with. Got a lot of good ones here, though. So we're gonna wrap it up here. Taylor, where can everybody find you?
Mostly just over on my channel on YouTube, The Gaming Shelf. Yeah, if you like all things JRPGs, that's where it's at. Been streaming a little bit more lately over there. I don't know if that's going to hold up, but yeah, do reviews, lists, all kinds of fun stuff. So if you like JRPGs, go check it out over there.
Yeah, Taylor's the man. Go check him out. I'm sure everybody watching this knows who you are, but just in case, if you haven't seen Taylor, go check him out at The Gaming Shelf. Slam, where can everybody find you?
Slam Zany on YouTube. Same. Lots of JRPG content. I do reviews, some lists and stuff, and then just some random videos too. I just did a Xenoblade Chronicles basically hype video because I'm so excited about that game. Yeah, just head on over to YouTube. That's where I'm at.
Awesome. And you can find me over at Retro Brandon. Relatively short or small amount of videos for now, but I'm building those up. I basically do reviews on retro games and lists every now and again, but going through some fun games right now. I got a video coming out in Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D. And then I'm going to have some more coming on the Pokemon trading card game, some of the older Pokemon games, as well as games like Xenogears. So very excited about those. I'm also really looking forward to Slam's eventual video on why he's wrong about Fantasia, but we'll talk about that one a different time. Thanks for coming, everyone. It was a blast being here, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
See you on the next one.
See ya.